Angela's done her makeup.
We are live now. Fingers crossed, anyway. We are live now. Hi, I'm Angela Cripps, the MD of the Recruiting Gym. This is Justin Hillier from Recruiter Insider. Hello, Justin. Good afternoon. How are you?
Well, you scraped in, I think, by 20 seconds saying it's afternoon.
Well, it was booked for 12 o'clock, so I'm assuming we are. We are 12 o'clock now. So are we live on LinkedIn? I'll go and check over
Yes,
there.
no, I've been notified. We are live.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. Find us wherever you
We're on YouTube. You and I have been on YouTube before.
Okay, now I'm worried. We did the session a month ago.
A show we did.
Yes.
We won't get into that. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Now, on the last show, we ended up talking about how we met and all the rest of it. So we're gonna dive into it a lot quicker today. If you do want to hear our story, which is a lovely story, then go back to the session before.
Yeah, this is recorded. Didn't like me.
What was that?
You just didn't like me.
I did like you. That's why I wanted to work with you. And 7 years later, I'm still working with you. The comment was, you're just not that likable. Funny. You get around that. And we got there. Things have moved on. Let us move on. Today is all about performance management. And even Justin and I in the green room have been having discussions and disagreements, and this is going to be interesting. So we're going to come at it from a traditional point of view from my side, and I'm going to share performance management, some slides around that and what I do with companies. And you can then look at, well, what do we got? What are we doing? What are we not? What's missing? What are the current myths around it as well? But Justin, just give us a little bit of an insight as to why performance management's important to you and Recruiter Insider at this time.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. We ask ourselves this question, Brad and I, who's my co-founder and best mate, we ask ourselves this question from time to time. And Brad's the one, ironically, for me at least anyway, is always coming back and going, yes, this is still what we do. So I set out to set up this business 8 odd years ago to measure the experience that consultants provide to candidates and clients. And we realized very quickly that the experience provided impacts outcomes, which obviously impacts someone's performance of being able to fill a role or not, because that's what everyone's measured on. And as the years have gone on, we've built more features than what I could possibly list. But we've gone down the further path, which still aligns to what we do, of measuring employee satisfaction and building in a specific performance management review, whatever tool you want to call it, that aggregates all of this data and correlates all of this data to look at performance from a more holistic perspective, not just a final outcome KPI kind of metric. What feeds into performance, what enables someone to perform, and having a look at the relationship between the employee, the candidate, the employee to the client, the employee to their colleagues, the employee to their business, the employee to their manager. Because if any of these elements aren't quite right, they're not going to perform, or you're not going to get a high-performing team and a high-performing business that's sustainable. You'll more than likely have ups and downs. And there's probably some people watching this now going, yeah, we go like this. Our performance is quarter to quarter all over the place. And of course, there's some market conditions that play into that from time to time. But you might have consultants who are, unbeknownst to you, why it happens, up 2 quarters, down 1, up 3, down 2, like it goes all over the place. So this is where we're coming at it from now, is having a look at the person and what drives them to perform, rather than just having a look at what the final outcome actually is and going, well, your activity numbers, which I know, and we were just having a little debate prior to this, your activity numbers are down, and you hammer someone for that. Like, you got to pick up your call numbers or your client meeting numbers or whatever it is. What if that person's not motivated to do so, but you don't know about it? What if their work-life balance isn't right, or they're not happy with the leadership, or their well-being's a little bit off? We don't ask the question, and that a lot of the time goes into someone's slipping of performance. So that's why we're focused on this so much, because we want to get the full view, not just a kind of one, because it's not one size fits all either.
Well, that leads into why a lot of people, they'll hire someone that's a really high performer, big biller, done amazing in their past job, but can't replicate that in a new environment with new people, because actually there's so much that goes into that success.
Yeah.
It's not just that individual's abilities. So let's get into it then, because I know we're going to have lots to talk on here. So first of all, I wanted to tackle those myths. I wanted to look at, okay, so what is it when you say performance management? I get so much pushback from people. So first and foremost, then we need to make sure that we're tackling these. That if you're not performing, you'll be put on performance management. So all of a sudden, it's a negative. That this is something that happens when you're not performing. That's not true. So that's a myth. Let's take that one out. If you're not achieving your targets, you'll be performance managed out of the business. So now it's a process as well to actually get you gone. That's not true either. Performance management comes into play once a year during their appraisal. No, it's not a once a year thing. Or
for
it's
some
all about
agencies, for some agencies, it is though.
Okay, well, they got it wrong.
I know.
That's what I'm going to tell them. That's not performance management. Give it another name, because performance management, then, what is performance management? It's about getting results. It focuses on getting the best from people and helping them achieve their potential all day, every day. And like you've just inferred, there's so much that goes into that we need to support that along the way. So that there are some elements. If we look at sort of the key elements then around that, yes, it is about setting goals and responsibilities, but it's all the coaching as well, and the support that goes into it, the motivating, the recognizing, and that's where it's picking up, recognizing, wait a minute, something's not quite right here. And yes, you can do that through evaluating the performance and planning their career development, what's going to move them ahead, what is going to motivate them, what's going to make a difference to them. So putting all these pieces of the puzzle together, that's going to be critical. It's not just about the dark blue bit, evaluating the performance. Have you hit your targets? That's just one part of it. So let's make sure we're doing all of it. Now, we talk in the recruiting team about the above the line mentality. So in other words, you have a minimum standard, a minimum acceptable standard, and you want to make sure that you are above the line. And that's the bottom line, as it were. So you set your minimum as a bottom line. The targets then are set above that, and over time they should increase, they should get better. Now, those targets aren't just on revenue. What we're talking about here when we're setting those minimum standards is setting that bar. And the bar stands for behaviors, activities, and results. So think about those. The results great, but they're going to come from the activities, and the activities are only going to work if the behaviors are right. And then we can expand on that with yours in a moment, because I know that then probably is the be all and end all, to be honest. That's the starting point, isn't it? So sometimes being able to delegate to people, to develop them. And one thing that I share a lot of, I'm not going to go into detail here, but if you want to know more about it, the empowerment framework, because it is the one thing that made a huge difference to me. If I had to pick one thing in my whole 35-year career, this would be it. This is what made the difference to me. And it's a simple 4-box framework. You've got go, then let know, ask then go, and no go. So thinking about an individual, looking at everything
That's quite a mouthful.
Well, if you say it all together, yeah, but you're going to take it.
Can you say that again 3 times really fast, or 4?
Can't do that. Can't do that. So responsibilities there. What are they doing? So yes, it can be elements of their jobs and activities, but it might be responsibilities with other people. It might be mentoring people and supporting. It might be becoming a mental health first aider. So what is it? What do they do in their job that they could just get on with and go? Don't worry. What are the things that they can do, but then they should let someone know? So it's an update on that. So if they are maybe doing mental health first aid, the let know would be trends and themes within the business that maybe the business is actually creating, and therefore we want to focus on that. It could be a client meeting. You're going to let others know how it went and what else needs to happen, and if you need any support on that. The ask then go The difference between these two usually is a manager's peace of mind. The ask then go is, check with me first, please, before you go ahead and do it. Now, the problem is when you've got someone that is forever checking, and this is where I was as a manager when this was shared with me. I wanted to check everything. I wanted to get approval on everything. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. So that's where all the things that I was doing in that box, my boss, my director then looked and said, okay, I'm now giving you permission. You can do it and let me know afterwards. So come back in 6 months, tell me what you've spent the budget on. I don't want to know beforehand. You do what you want to do. I'll find out in 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, this is all a bit panicky. But that made a huge difference to me. And it also meant I wasn't chasing her all the time and bothering her and all the rest of it. So if you're one of those managers that's got people that in their performance, they're checking, then use this, get some of those activities out of the ask then go into the go then let know, and that'll make the difference. The no go is all about the development, all about what do you want to get involved in? Let's take next 6 months to a year. What projects would you like to get involved in? What skills, what development do you need? What help, what support that's not there at the moment? So let's start talking about those. There might be a no-go this month and we'll start planning them in for the next 6 months to a year. So things like that can make a huge difference to someone's performance. I know it did to me. Obviously, we're a team of 12 coaches and trainers. People are at the core of performance management, and their involvement is not automatic. So you want to make sure that you are supporting individuals. It's the questions, how can I help? And it's about them continually striving to improve their performance. Motivating, again, we're going to come on to it with yours. So quick thing here that I've utilised with companies, which is Roger Dupree's 6 questions. Have you ever heard of this, Justin? I'm wondering if we did it with you, but probably not. This is, Roger Dupree was working at Rank Xerox for 20 odd years. And they wanted to look at, okay, what's making a difference where people are performing or they're not performing. And a lot of it came down to management communication. I think there was a Gallup study that like 63% of people's performance come from their communication with their manager and how that works. We know it's a big deal anyway. So this was 6 questions that employees need their managers to share with them. They need them to give them the answers to these 6 questions. And they're pretty simple, but go and test yourself, give yourself a rating score from poor to excellent, ask the team to do it. You'll be surprised. There's quite a few in there that people look at it and go, yeah, actually, we don't really do that. So these are the 6 questions then. And you'll be able to find this. Just put in Roger Dupree's model and it'll come up on Google for you. So 1, job responsibilities. In other words, what's my job? Have I got a job description? Has it been updated? Do I actually know? And I've been working with companies in the last few months where the senior person's going, actually, I haven't got one. I don't know. Oops.
I hear it often.
Yeah, exactly. Performance feedback. So this isn't how I'm doing in the sense of am I doing well or am I not doing well? It's not that level of performance. It's actually getting feedback. And am I actually getting the feedback? Do I know how I'm doing? I might be doing bad, I might be doing good, but do I know? So have the expectations been set? Do I know that what the bottom line is, what the bar is, what I need to do to be above the bar mentality? Do I know? Because am I getting that feedback? And a lot of people aren't necessarily. The individual needs come in here as well around that, and a lot of it is around mental health, around does anyone care? Am I an individual or am I just a number to them? Is probably the best way to describe that. His term was how's my unit doing? So that could be how's my team doing? How's my department doing? How's my company doing? Am I getting updates? Do they let me know where we're going, what we're doing? What's the plan, which links into 5? Is there a vision, mission, values? Do I know where we're heading? Or am I just here working day to day, just getting on with it? Whatever happens will happen. And then that final bit back to empowerment. How can I help? So what's my part in all of this? If we're going here, how do I support that? And that makes job satisfaction go through the roof. Really important so that people can actually see that. And if you are planning people's career and empowering them and using the empowerment framework, remember, everyone is different. So depending on who you ask, the question will be different. So knowing what motivates them is really important. Knowing where they are now, but knowing where they want to be. Yeah, what's that plan? How are we moving forwards? And I love this picture. How deep is the mud? Well, it depends on who you ask, because we all go through the same stuff differently. So their capabilities, their competencies are going to be different. Some people find it easy. Some people not so much. That little Jack Russell's face, it's like, oh, just get my face out. So things like that, when you're thinking about performance management, all of a sudden it adds so many different layers to it. And of course, we do want to evaluate. That is one of the key steps going along. So what have you got planned in? How do you evaluate? So whether it's a weekly catch-up, a monthly one-to-one performance review, quarterly business plans. You talked about quarters earlier. Our business works really well in quarters. That half-yearly review, where are we on our big plan, and having an annual appraisal with the half-yearly review. All of these things can make a difference. So if we've got all of those elements in there, then now we're going to have the opportunity to talk about performance on a regular basis, definitely weekly, if not even there'll be day-to-day elements that you'll be catching up with people. But these are a lot more formal, to make sure that you've, focus on the business and what people are achieving, but you also want to make sure that you're focusing on the individual. It's not just about the person. It's about the person and the business moving together. Okay, so that was a little whistle-stop tour, as it were, of the of our situation with regards to performance management. Let me just click down here. Is that one gone? Yeah, lovely. So let me just get your thoughts first of all on some of those elements that I've put in there.
You asking the people watching or me?
Anyone who's listening.
It was actually. I look at it. Can people just going to jump in chat, or can they jump in and talk?
They can't jump in and talk, but they can put it in the chat, and I'm going to head over to LinkedIn as well to make sure that's happening.
That was interesting for me to look at, because a selfish side of me looks at that and goes, "That's exactly what we're aiming to do, and we've been building for the last few years on our platform to enable that view of an individual to look at performance from all of those perspectives." So that was when you touched on individual needs there. Does someone care? That to me stood out more than anything else, because before we jumped on this, you and I were talking, as we said, I was saying that most agencies, and I've asked agency owners this. In fact, let's ask the audience. How many people do we have watching, Angela? Quite a few. I'd imagine we got a few, at least 3. I think now you're on mute, so we don't know. You're on mute. You're on mute. Yes. You're still on mute.
Sorry. I'm trying to get your slides up, and I'm trying to look at the.
I'll take over. That's fine. I can talk for the next 35 minutes by myself.
Because I started the LinkedIn, when you go into it, obviously it's not muted straight away, which is really annoying, LinkedIn. So I had to mute myself, otherwise we come back double time or fit. And I am listening to you, and I was answering you, but I'd forgotten that I'd muted myself. Hey, if it's on your bingo card, well done.
Anyway. So yeah, you're on mute. That should be. We should do a Zoom bingo card. So how many did we have watching?
Oh, sorry, I'm still not gone back to those.
That's okay. Whoever's watching, let's imagine we've got someone watching for a moment. I want to ask all those that are watching, what is your key driver to look at someone's performance? What are you measuring them primarily against that goes into going, right, this person's doing well? Just chuck it in chat. What is the primary measurement that you're looking at? Forget everything Angela's just shared, because that's cheating. What are you actually measuring people by right now? What answers do we have, Angela?
Let me just go and have a look on the other elements as well. So yeah, so we got KPIs coming through, revenue, new clients is
KPI,
a key one at the moment.
Yep, they're all KPIs. They're all numbers.
Consistency. Yep. No, Sky's come through with consistency. Thank you, Sky.
Consistency, like Sky, on what specifically? Let me guess.
Yeah.
KPIs.
Possibly.
Sky, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be corrected, but I'm going to assume jump in and tell us what it is. But I'm going to assume it's consistency on KPIs. If you tell us something else, I will be surprised, but it's good if it is. But when you said individual needs and looking at people, I think we primarily look at people and their numbers, which starts us we then look at people as a number. That person to our business is worth 350K in billing and they cost us 200K, so we make 150K. They're looked at as numbers because that's how we're actually measuring them and what their value is to the business. However, someone's value to the business goes beyond the numbers, and they're not going to achieve numbers if the elements that sit behind them wanting to perform or being able to perform at their best aren't quite right. And what you ran through there was everything that we're talking about with our clients right now, that we're moving towards enabling a view of what does each individual person in the business classify as their primary driver, or their three most important, and their next five, and their next five, and their next three. So we've actually come up with 16 different key metrics on that. These are things we're all measuring at the moment, but it feeds into this element of, so defining success. What does that look like? And I've asked a bunch of agency owners, and we just did that as an exercise there. Did Sky come back and say anything other than KPIs out of interest?
Bear with me. No, he didn't. I'm guessing Sky is a man, but I could be wrong. No, it might be a lady. I can't see the picture.
Yeah, I'm tipping it's female. Could be either, but yes. So these 4 buckets, but the 16 bullet points within, I've asked agency owners to preface all of this. What is your key primary measurement of someone's performance or success and value to the business? And invariably, just like we saw with the question we asked our audience here, KPIs came out number 1. It was a KPIs kind of a broad bucket for something like client meetings or revenue, or basically the numbers, activity levels, outcomes. But what's really interesting, and the conversation I then had with all the agency owners, and let's do this as an exercise. Everyone that answered that question, and you said KPIs or revenue or whatever, what do you think your employees would say is their key driver? Don't look at the cheat screen. I'm giving you answers, and we should have thought of that beforehand.
I can hide it for a minute if you want.
What would your employees say is their key driver?
I mean, because we're recruiters and because we're sort of honed on success, I think the initial thought would be revenue, and I need to achieve revenue, but they have got no thought behind how they're going to do that. It's just there. That's like my end.
Is it revenue though? I don't think it will be revenue. I think if it's going to be any metric whatsoever, and I don't think we'll see a metric come up as a number 1 driver for an employee. Hardcore BD people, perhaps. Salary commission will probably come out on top, right?
And old school. That's the thing. It's changed, isn't it?
We're old school.
We're old. Now.
we're dealing with a totally different demographic, generation, etc. than you and I and people that we know and who've been in the industry for 20 plus years. We were all just KPI driven. That's what we knew, and that's what a lot of agency owners grew up with who've been in the industry as long as we have as well. Yes, KPI, absolutely. KPI. I remember having to do 50 calls in a day, 2 CVs sent, 2 new clients brought on, there's 2 new jobs, and 2 candidates out to interview. Bare minimum every day, KPI'd on all those metrics. It was ridiculous. But today, it's totally different. And I think the last 4 years has changed this, or shined a light on a lot more of this than any other time, that someone's well-being or work-life balance or career development, which has always been a top priority, is more likely to be your employee's top 3 drivers to enable them to succeed than something like salary commission, which, mind you, has never, ever, how long we got? Another 20 minutes, I can probably say ever, has never been number 1. All the surveys, you can look at it anywhere around the world. I've got data from Australia, there's data here. Salary commission has never been the number 1 key driver when looking at your employees' feedback, going, this is what I'm primarily looking for in a new job. It's not the reason they move.
See, for me, someone my age, that's really shocking. It'd be interesting to know. I won't ask you, Sky, how old you are. We're having a conversation now on LinkedIn, and yes, she is a woman. She says it was KPIs
You can't
primarily.
clear that up.
I think the employees would say revenue, so it's going up from there. But you're right. We've had a phenomenal 4 years of perfect storm and all over the place and things we've never ever experienced before, and it's made people think, hasn't it? And therefore people joining over the last 4 years or so into our marketplace have a totally different perspective on all of this.
Well, you mentioned earlier that when you see a high billing consultant change companies and they can't replicate that success somewhere else, it's because all of these, if we look at this screen, all the other dynamics that go into that business and that culture and that leadership and that career development opportunity and their work-life balance, who they work with, the resources, every single little bit of these is different than where they've come from. So that, and we know that people aren't that great with change. I can't compute that because I don't have a problem with change. But if they're not, we know people inherently aren't comfortable with change. And when they do change, all of these elements, they've now got to get used to again. They're not going to hit the ground running in the first 6, maybe 12 or even 18 months. They're basically almost a rookie again in a lot of respects because they've got to learn a new culture. They've got to learn a new management style. They've got to, deal with a different work-life balance. Their well-being may then be off kilter. Their individual needs change. The competencies of their role, what they're being measured against, are now slightly different. So if all of those are different, KPIs are going to be invariably affected. So how do you manage that? I think today we're just managing people by KPIs and not looking at what goes into having people perform.
Well, this is interesting because it seems like it's a topic that I don't know whether it's just in my world at the moment. Be interesting. Sky and I've got a relationship going on here now. She first started in recruitment 2016, very KPI driven. She's a millennial, where she was. But yeah, if we look at these last 4 years, all of a sudden the appreciation of our mental health and well-being and the impact that has on us has really come to the forefront. I was watching the Simone Biles documentary on Netflix, and of course that was 2020, and it all fell apart for her when she went to the Tokyo Olympics. And you've got so many of the things that you've been mentioning here that can make the difference. So for her, I mean, she lost her head. It was sort of a physical thing, but she also knows the amount of stress going to the Olympics, not having her family there for the first time ever, not having that support network, really threw a lot of the athletes out. And I've seen on this Olympics this year, both the Paralympics as well, them talking so much about their family and friends and then being able to be there and the impact that has on their performance and the difference it makes to them and their well-being in that sense. And there's always sports references here, isn't there? And we're back with Anthony Joshua on Saturday night. 80% of the critics and everything expected him to win. So normally that's a pretty much a shoe-in. But as soon as he walked in, I watch it with my dad. I mean, he used to get me up when I was 3 or 4, middle of the night, to watch Muhammad Ali. So we've got this link. We always have sort of family around for the big fights. But when he walked in, we looked in his eyes and we said, "There's something not right. He doesn't look right. He looks more like he did when he first came out against Andy Ruiz, and he lost that one, and that was a shock loss as well." So it was about that mental capacity that suddenly was changing. And I'll get the links for everyone. Last week, we did a Meet the Expert. So we've done 46 months in a row where we get an expert on to talk about a topic. And it was the psychology of performance last week. So we actually had a psychologist hypnotherapist, and he works with recruitment companies.
Hit your target, hit your target, hit your target. Is that what he was saying? Oh.
No. It's all about the mental health and well-being of the person, making the impact.
Therapist. So I just thought that he was hypnotizing people to go hit your target, hit your target, hit your target.
Well, it's getting them to get inside themselves and yeah, that mindfulness and taking time out and slow down. So it's the opposite of hit your target. It's going the opposite way. And we ended up on Wendy Rhodes from Billions. Have you ever watched that?
Performance coach, yes.
Exactly. That's what's becoming prevalent. And so we've had it in sport for a long time, haven't we?
And we see players, and look, I'm sure this happens in football here, and I think about Australian football back home. So a top player will change clubs, but not have the same impact, effect, efficiency, everything in a new team, because all the systems have changed, all the people have changed, everything is totally different. They are a rookie again. They've got to learn pretty much everything from scratch. They know how to do the job. They know how to pass the ball. They know how to do, all the skills are there, but they've got to learn to use those skills in a slightly different way now to fit into a new team. But we, again, look at people in terms of their final output. Is that person performing, rather than going, how do we help this person perform? Just saying, hey, go do 10 client meetings isn't helping someone if they're actually not feeling all that well. Their mental state isn't there, or their work life, like all these different elements are going to play a role in that final outcome.
So what can we do to help them then?
Well, this is how we are, at least, and I'm not here to push our product or anything, but we collect all this information. This is what we do. So all of these different elements on the screen is information we have in our platform that an agency can collate and look at from all these different angles. And it was pointed out to me, and I wish this was my idea, but it was pointed out to me that, hey, you have all this information. Why aren't you looking at it from this perspective? I've always thought about it, but I didn't. Oh God, we have it. Dear, oops, I missed it. So we are actually going to enable an employee, out of all of these elements, to weight, rank, score, etc., what is most important to them, what helps them drive performance. The agency will do the same. So then all of a sudden, the agency has a view of every employee, what drives them, what's most important to them, their top priorities, second tier, third tier, etc. And then when they start to drop off on any of those, we'll have a look at what the agency's primary drivers are, and if they're there, then therefore impacted. But it'll pick up that trigger and that slowdown in performance, so you can act on that far sooner than getting to 3 months, 5, 6 months down the line and going, oh, what's going wrong? Your client meetings are off. Pick up your activity levels, you naughty little person. You've slipped off there. But knowing that someone's work-life balance, or they're not happy with their career development, whatever it might be, is being affected, that's going into that, they're obviously then a flight risk to the business, because they're potentially looking outside as well. So we'll be able to identify that and see trends in people leaving and identify how much of an impact all these different factors have in that. But it'll enable managers to actually manage their employees a lot better. Let's go, right, Sally, I know career development's super important for you, but Josh, your well-being is most important, and your work-life balance. So how do we make sure you've got that right? Are we setting you up for success on that? Give them all the KPIs under the sun. That's fine. There needs to be a result outcome. They need to be able to deliver on, what they're tasked to do as well. But you need to help them get there. You don't just set out to go, hey, I'm going to climb Mount Everest today. Go.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, looking at your 4 boxes here, the KPIs is just one of the 16 elements that go into this. There's a couple on here I'd like you to explain a little bit more, just because it's not obvious, as it were, rather than going through all of them. So if we were talking about career development, so what's the 1%ers? Yes. What's that all about?
So 1%ers, it's probably an internal jargon term we've used. We've renamed basically marginal gains. So every employee can actually set up 3 tasks or 3 marginal gain activities they want to continuously focus on. So what role does that play into someone's career development and personal development to make sure that they're progressing in all of that and feeling comfortable, which obviously ties in marginal gains or 1%ers into career development, which could tie into their well-being or how happy they are with leadership, that they've been given those opportunities, etc. So it's interesting once you start to work through all of this, how intrinsically aligned they all are, and how all of these drivers come back to what the agency invariably, as we saw with the answers before, want, which is KPI outcomes. So we'll have 10 KPIs you'll be able to individually rank and score and put into that as well. So it's not just going to be generic KPIs. We'll have 10 in there you'll be able to sort through.
Okay.
But yeah,
give us one that wouldn't be considered a generic, that's a bit left field.
Sorry, what was that?
The KPIs, you're saying that the list that you've got in there, what would be one that people wouldn't necessarily think of as a KPI?
Oh,
I put you on the spot.
I don't know that. Yeah, you did. Thank you. I've got to try and remember all the 10 KPIs.
Everything on your platform.
I haven't committed to memory, surprisingly. Look, it's pretty much the basics, I would have thought. Revenue, client meetings, interview to placement ratios, the standard kind of things that you would expect to see. We could go to town and do 30 KPIs, but I think that's getting a bit ridiculous. I think the 10 core ones that we've got there are pretty solid. But those main ones, there's nothing out of the ordinary, I wouldn't have thought. Revenue, of course. Sorry, everyone, I forgot revenue.
It's going to be in there, isn't it? But certainly then around sort of having them weighted and like you say, prioritizing which is most important to you, and that could change every quarter as well, depending on where
absolutely.
you are.
And an employee, we're going to enable it so an employee can come in at any time and change it, and the agency will see that change. The agency will see what their employee as a whole cohort think, but then being able to drill down to each individual to better manage and support them. But they'll be able to calibrate what they actually have as their key drivers once they see their employee cohort. So yes, I think we'll see agencies go KPIs 1, but then see their employees go, actually, it's work-life balance, it's well-being, and go, oh, we've got that at like 9 and 10. Oops.
Well, yeah.
The disparity is going to be really interesting to watch, and seeing how agencies react to that.
Well, that's the thing. What the boss, let's say, thinks is the most important thing in the business, by getting the team involved, things like looking at their personal values and identifying what's most important to them. And yes, you can do it as a group then, and what 5 come out the most from everyone, and therefore as a team, these are the ones that we're going to focus our engagement strategy on, because then that hits everyone, and there's different things. But the individual appraisals and the opportunity to develop and their career development plans, you focus on their individuals and what's most important to them, and then you can adapt it. So being able to adapt those KPIs to the person as well, and to have some flexibility. And that's something I learned along the way, that we need to have the different levels, in the sense of, you might say all 10 for a new person in their first year. We need to monitor everything. You need to know what good looks like. You need to be given the pathway to success. And therefore, we know if you do these things, the likelihood is you're going to be successful, and we're going to support, we're going to train, we're going to coach you to be able to do those things. But once a person's got the job, understands it, has data to look back on, it's them about them being in the driving seat, isn't it? And what performance they're looking for, because again, very different depending on their values. You might have someone that's highly ambitious and looking for advancement. I ended up talking last week with one of our training session about a lady at Blue Arrow that did 44 years as a perm consultant. She was there all of that time. That's all she wanted to do. But she was brilliant. Obviously, everyone in the town knew her. Everyone went to her for their jobs. All the clients did as well. She was so slick at what she did, but she wasn't looking for advancement. So if you'd honed her career development around development, it wouldn't have even factored. That's not what she was all about. Yeah. So
Formula One's, as much as I'm not a Formula One person, it's one of the most interesting sports to look at from a performance perspective.
Yeah.
There's always 2 drivers per team, and yet each team is different. Each team for each driver is different. The car is set up differently. The team behind them is different, that helps that driver perform. Yes, it's largely about the car and the technology, but each team is set up differently. And McLaren, the chief people officer, I read an article a few weeks ago, they're looking at internally within the business, set aside the Formula One team because they've got 1,000+ people that go into getting the best out of the car and the driver, etc. Nutritionists, mental health, everything, right? And that's right across sport today. We're just starting to see elements of that slip into business now. Performance coach that you mentioned with Wendy Rhodes before, but the chief people officer of McLaren is looking to build a high performance team for the business internally with all the other employees that work within the company, but it's not focused on KPIs. It's focused on well-being and culture. It's got nothing to do with the final outcome because they understand, or he understands, that what goes into helping someone perform is how they feel.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that. You talked about McLaren there, and you've got Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, pretty similar actually at the moment, and it's sort of back forward. But then you go to Red Bull, who for 3-4 years have dominated the sport. You've got Verstappen at the highest end, Perez really struggling. So same car, could be 10 places difference quite easily in this last season or two. But there was a huge blow up at the beginning of the year. You've got Christian Horner causing problems left, right, and centre with sexual harassment cases and all the rest of it. You've got Adrian Newey that decides to leave at that point, who is the engineer that everyone wants. I think he's been paid 30 million to go to Aston Martin a year to actually then sort their cars out, because wherever he goes, he wins. So I can't wait for the documentary out on him. But as soon as it all got a little bit, I mean, it's the same people, same cars, apart from Adrian Newey taking himself away from it. He's still part of the team, but not really. That team has fallen apart. in essence,
one or two people and everything. So imagine
compared to where it was. Yeah.
So there's a couple of scary things I've seen and heard directly from agency owners that I've been speaking to over the last kind of this year, pretty much. There are actually some, and I'm not going to obviously, I've spoken to some, and they've literally told me, we don't want to collect feedback on what our employees think about the business, on how we support them with career development or their well-being or what they think of the culture or anything like that. Because once we, wait for it, this is the scary part. Once we get that feedback, we have to do something about it.
Yes.
No.
Oh, really?
No shit. Whether it's good or bad, you should want to, I couldn't sit there as an owner. And I was thinking about this morning, knowing we were talking about this today. Sitting there as an owner of a business, thinking to myself, I could not be comfortable with myself if I ignored my employees and what made them actually want to perform and work for me as the CEO, the founder, whatever. Because that's my pride, right?
Yeah.
I take pride in that, of having employees that we have want to work not just for the business, for themselves, to get the most out of themselves, but they're also, as you think of it, you need to play for your captain or your manager or your coach or whatever it is. There's a lot that goes into that. Agency owners not wanting to hear that feedback just astonishes me. So I've got zero doubt those agencies are the ones also that are on roller coaster rides of performance. Not wanting to know doesn't make a problem go away.
Yeah. They don't know what's triggering it. And the staff obviously are not going to feel listened to because they're not even asked. But if they were asked and then nothing happened. So this is where it's critical. Those quarterly updates from the powers that be, letting us know, okay, where are we going? What did we say we were going to do? What have we achieved so far? What's next? What's going to be the challenges in the next quarter? How can we support you to be able to achieve that? That comes from the top down. And it's really critical. And it's that communication. Well, back to Roger Dupree again. That communication from the top, letting you know all of that information, is what makes a difference for performance. It's not just setting a KPI and hoping someone will hit it along the way. That's never going to happen.
I think it's two-way communication, not just from the top. The employee needs to have the opportunity to say, this is what's, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't feel right. And it can be all anonymous. That's fine. It's, at least you know what your employees are thinking so that you can change things. Change can be good. If it's going to impact people's performance, you should want to know to help them perform. Because if you are on these performance roller coaster rides, there's a reason. It's not just always market conditions. They can definitely play a part. But I think we should set a challenge, Angela.
Right. What's this?
Because you kicked off saying that performance management is a scary term.
Not scary. There's myths around it. It's misunderstood.
The term is definitely misunderstood, because I remember actually when we first said we were releasing or building a performance, we called it performance management, which we've changed to performance review just because, it was slightly less, I don't know what the word is, obtrusive. Triggering's another great word, yes. One of our clients, actually our longest client, to be fair, contacted me and said, "Hey, is this going to be putting people onto performance management plans? As in,
yes,
we're going to have it?" I'm like, no, it's not that at all. No, this is to help you manage the performance process. So I think this is the challenge. I think we need to come up with a new name for it.
Because it's got a bad rap, hasn't it?
It's got a bad rap.
Got a bad rap.
Yeah, KPIs have turned into OKRs, haven't they?
Yeah. So objective key results, are they?
I can't remember either. I don't use them. But yeah, OKRs are just a new term essentially for KPIs, I feel. But I've been playing around. I haven't really got the right one yet, but I think you touched on it, and it was interesting because I've come up with half the same thing. Something like a people impact strategy or people impact performance, or something that's not necessarily got performance at the start.
Yeah.
It should have people in the naming and framing of it, because they're at the center of everything. Is it their performance? Is it their impact? Is it their, I don't know what else other words we can come up with. But
so
I think if we rename it,
are we? People performance impact, or
people impact strategy, or approach, or I know, that's why I didn't want to use it. You weren't supposed to pick up on that, by the way. This is the one reason I haven't gone with it, because the acronym is no good.
PSI.
Hopefully everyone's got, no one, hey, I guarantee you no one will forget it.
Can't have that. But PSI, because you have PSI as a measurement for your tire pressure, don't you?
Air in tires. Yes.
Yeah.
Which helps the performance of your car.
So again, all of those things, and those incremental differences, those 1%ers, like you said, sometimes it's just a little tweak, and it could be the name. Is the 1%?
I think the name will change. I think we need to change the name, and I think we need to stop looking at performance just from a numbers perspective. If you think about it, if we come back to a sports analogy, which obviously we all love to use, losing a player who might not be the best player in the team can have a massive impact on the morale and culture of the playing group, which can greatly have flow-on effects. Likewise, bringing someone into the team that has the counter effects, crappy culture, they're a pain to play with or work with, can also impact performance as well. So instead of looking at it
time and time again, it's amazing the impact one person can have on a big team. Oh.
Yep. So instead of looking at performance as purely a KPI-driven exercise, what does that person add by way of culture? What do they add by way of experience and intellectual, what's the term? Institutional memory that they've got, all that experience that they've got that they bring to the table as well. What are they going to add to the business in all different areas that is beyond just a KPI? Now, they need to obviously, at least pay for themselves and you make some profit on it, of course. We're not running charities. We are running a business. We want to be profitable. And I think everyone understands that.
Yeah.
But beyond KPIs, what is the person's value to that business? And measuring that and getting their feedback to understand that and making sure that you can manage that person to get the best, help them get the best out of themselves, I think is far more holistic than going, hey, your numbers are not right, which makes them feel now that they are just a number.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much work to do here. So if performance management, whatever you want to call it, is an issue for you for whatever reason, and it might be a mindset thing. It could be a strategy. It could be down to basic. We've got nothing, because maybe a bit like Sky, 2016, I was working for a company that was KPI, KPI, KPI. And I've seen so many directors there, and I think she is as well, where they've set up their own companies and they've done nothing. They want to get away totally from any performance measurements, because they, in their terms, we hire intelligent people that are capable. We let them do it for themselves. But we know every business has to have those critical performance elements, and to be working on them, to be getting feedback. And is it going in the right direction? And what are the trends? And how do we change this? And that's why I love those quarterly updates, because you tell them what's happened. You then look forwards. And then, as you said, you get the team involved and say, okay, here's what we're aiming for in the next quarter. You're going to know where the issues are going to be and what's going to be most difficult. Let's have a session of brainstorming, whatever you want to call it, blue sky thought thinking session. What's the best way to attack this? Because you're the people doing the job. So let's get your input. So rather than the company telling everyone what to do all the time, flip it around. Here's where we're going. This is what we're trying to achieve. Get the individuals that are doing the job to come back with, okay, how could we overcome this challenge? Get their brains working on it, and then supporting each other, because then they all can see where it came from. They've all got the ideas. They can all go and put them into practice to make that difference. So I love all of these elements, but it needs to be collaborative, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting when I don't hear it as much anymore. I think it's a phrase that's kind of slipped out, thankfully. Because I've never believed any company that ever says it, because actions speak louder than words, that employees are the greatest asset to the business. That phrase I don't hear too often these days, which is a good and a bad thing in some respects. Especially, I think it's a bad thing if you're just looking at them from a numbers perspective, because they're not your greatest asset then. You don't value them as a person, you value them as a number. And there's a lot more that goes into a business, because if you look at why people leave, they typically leave because their manager.
Yeah.
They stay for their colleagues. And they perform because they're happy. And it's actually weirdly that simple.
Yeah. Engaged employees, what is it? 27% bottom line profit increase from engaged and happy employees. So that engagement strategy, what are we doing?
Engagement and happiness means something different to every person.
Yeah, back to their values, their personal values. What's important to them?
So can we challenge everyone? Has anyone got another term for performance management that is not an acronym of PIS?
Well, we need to get out there. And I know I've done this before as well, because that term has had a bad rap for quite a while. But it is all about getting the best out of people and allowing them to be the best that they can be. So if we can create environments where people can be the best that they can be, that then impacts work and life, doesn't it? Because if you're enjoying work and you're being successful and you're loving what you do, then actually we know your life is going to be so much better in every other element of it as well. And the opposite.
Yeah, here's something weird. So as you know, you've known me for a little while now. I'm a little bit different than most. I can deal with someone yelling at me or telling me absolutely bluntly that was crap or whatever, blah blah. A lot of people can't deal with that.
I'm laughing because I remember the first time I saw you and people telling you that they didn't like your topic and the way you defended yourself and came back at them. So I would question that.
No. This is the difference though. So yes, I obviously went on the defensive, as most people would. I definitely went on the attack. I wouldn't say I was defensive. I went on the attack.
Yeah.
It wasn't defensive. It was attack. You attack me, I'm attacking you. But it's listening to that and taking that on board and going away and being able to do something with that. But a lot of people would get that and they might defend themselves or whatever, and then completely go in the hole or go completely another direction, whatever, and not take it on. So understanding that everyone is different and what's going to drive someone is totally different to the next, which is why we need to be measuring this to this level, not just, sorry to go on it again, but not just KPIs, because that's not the only indicator.
No, there's so much to this. So feedback obviously has been your life for the last 7-8 years or so. So started with candidate feedback, the client feedback's come into that now, and leadership experienced feedback. What's that?
That's a good question. I did have to put another word there because it wasn't quite clear to everyone what we meant by that. Their experience is basically, it's the other way around, what their experience is with the leadership in the business.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, getting that feedback, asking for it, and then doing something about it.
What do they think? What do they think about leadership? Are they happy with leadership? Are they happy with the direction the company's going, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. And again, linking back to those points. And I was working with a company this morning on that. And we're looking at the company values. We're looking at the environment. We're looking at the vision with then all the detail behind it. But we're finishing with the people plan, with individuals' career development, their personal development, their individual needs. And hopefully we'll then look at how they can make those the 1%ers, the impact on that. I'm loving all of this. Can't wait to see more on it. So this is the starting point for Recruiter Insider, isn't it? Sharing
I think this is the final point for us.
Okay. Starting point, sharing it with the world. Does it work? I know you've been working on it forever.
So we've got all this. You've got the ability to get all of this information as it stands today. The final stage, I think, and I say this, and our clients would just laugh at me, to be fair, if they heard me say this. We build so much on the platform, it's not funny in terms of new features, etc., different ways. We're still finding out today of what we can do with the data. It's quite insane. This is kind of the overarching view of pulling all this together to look at performance from every angle, not just where we started 8 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it is now, on candidate and client feedback, which is just one view. Are you making your customers happy? Which is obviously a really important element, mind you, because and we've seen it in the data as well, if your candidates don't like you, good luck. We've literally, our very first case study came from a consultant whose candidates didn't like her. Now, she changed all that around and her performance went through the roof. That was our very first case study 7 years ago.
That just shows you, doesn't it, the impact that can have. So I've put the link in there, and specifically to that element around the relationship intelligence platform as well. So do reach out to Justin around all of these elements, and we'll get you back in like a quarter's time, which would be Christmas. So let's do early New Year, where we'll be
kind of New Year-ish,
New Year-ish, where we'll be getting more data based around this.
Well, we hopefully, Q1 next year we'll build this, so you can do this calibration and this exercise of who defines what is most important to them, or what they define as most important to them. And I think that correlation, once we have that data across the platform, seeing what really does drive employees versus the business, that's going to be fascinating. And I think an eye opener. And in fact, I know exactly what the answers will be already. It was the same exercise we did here. KPIs were number one.
Well, hopefully we can change that then, make a difference. It will at least level it up a little bit.
I'd like to see a little bit closer calibration. Yeah.
Let's do that as a plan. But we've also got our action to come up with a better phrase than performance management. So I'll be thinking about
that. Is the challenge. Let's change performance management. What do we call it moving forward?
We'll see. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. So we'll see you back again in Q1 for that. If you've enjoyed this, then the Recruiting Gym, we offer 8 pro bono courses where we've got a lot of these sessions, nearly 500 different sessions on anything and everything to do with recruitment, from 5 minutes to an hour. So you can delve into all of this to help and support you and to develop yourselves. So don't wait for your managers to do it if they're not doing anything. You crack on yourself and take some responsibility. Thanks, everyone.